guys, and welcome to the Money Podcast. This episode, we're talking about packing up and heading out overseas. You know, for many people, international travel is a bucket list item. The idea of traveling the world can be alluring, but isn't it expensive? Well, maybe it doesn't have to break your budget. Today, we're going to talk about how you can travel abroad on just a little bit of money, and maybe even do it for weeks at a time. I'm your host, Stacey Johnson. As usual, my co-host will be financial journalist Miranda Marquardt. Hello, Miranda.
Hello from Dallas-Fort Worth Airport.
Miranda is stuck in an airport right now, so she may have to drop off of our podcast, but that's okay. We'll use her while we can. Listening in and sometimes contributing is our producer and novice investor, Aaron Freeman. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, guys. You guys got your bucket list where you want to go? Ready?
I've got my bucket. My bucket list is just waking up every morning, Aaron. Our special guest today is money expert and frequent traveler, Martin Dasko. Did I say your name right? Martin Dasko it is?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here, Martin. Martin is the founder of the financial education website Studonomics. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I like to play on words. You know, people think it's Studonomics, so I thought it was clever.
Oh, I like that even better.
It was 14 years ago.
I want to be a guest author on Studonomics.
It was cool 14 years ago, you know, when everyone was doing the omics.
It also works because Martin is an amateur wrestler.
No way.
Oh, I do a lot of different things, yes.
So the stud works really well, too.
Oh, I'm liking this, Studonomics. Okay, let's get the ball rolling. But first, a quick disclaimer. Should we discuss specific investments in this podcast? We probably won't, but should we? Don't take them as recommendations because they're never recommendations. Before you invest in anything, you've got to do your own research. You got to make your own decisions. Okay, back to the topic at hand, which was not studs or wrestling. It was international travel. So, Martin, tell us a little bit about what you do. You travel for weeks at a time?
Oh, so yeah, it's kind of unrelated, my travel and in my regular life. But I've been lucky enough to build a digital income and like get into saving and investing and build my savings, build my income, build multiple income sources. And as a result, I really got into travel when I read like the 4-Hour Workweek when I was like 21 years old and like 12 years ago, a long time ago. And I really got into travel, and then I've just been traveling a lot every year as much as I can. And sometimes I document my travels, but I'm not really a travel blogger. I'm just someone who loves to travel.
So now tell me about a typical trip. Well, like, where was the last place you went for any length of time?
So I went to Mexico for 2 months in January and February.
Whoa.
And yeah, it's weird. I read the book Vagabonding, and I kind of liked the idea of being on the road for a while until I did it, and I realized like I don't want to be on the road for that long. Like I do actually like my life at home, you know, and I like my friends, and I have a training schedule. I do like jiu-jitsu and like wrestling and like weightlifting. I like my life, but I just like adventure. So yeah, so I just started traveling, and now that this year it was kind of like it was really cold here, and things were cheap, so I went on longer trips. So I went to Mexico and Colombia in January and February.
Now, how can you afford to do that? How can you be gone for months at a time?
So this is the $1 million question. And like I read this quote once, and this quote says, people think they want $1 million, but they really want $1 million experiences. So like we think that we want all this money, we need all this money, but travel isn't that expensive. And like there's a few caveats here, of course. Like I don't stay at 5-star resorts. It's like when I'm on my trips, people message me. They're like, "Oh, what resort are you at?" I'm like, "I'm at an Airbnb, staying with the locals. I'm not at a resort, right?" So we often assume that travel is like this like expensive endeavor where you have to like stay at a 5-star resort, and like you go if you stay at a 5-star resort. I mean, obviously I couldn't afford that for 2 months, like most people couldn't, because it's like $2,000 for a week. That's a lot. So I've just learned over time that if you're a little bit creative, you can stay on the road for as long as you want, and like. It won't always be glamorous, but you'll be on the road. You're in Mexico. It's January in Canada, which means like minus 30. It's like 0 Fahrenheit. Like I don't want
so that's
that. I want to
you live in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
So hostels have been around forever, but since the digital age, you know, we have Airbnbs. You think that's made it easier to do this kind of thing? You know, versus...
Yeah, Airbnb's made it super easy now. It's ridiculously easy because you can find like places, and like. Most of us have to work, right? Like, I'm still working when I travel. So with Airbnb, you get Wi-Fi. You're like in a real apartment. You can stay with locals. You can immerse yourself in the culture. It's made it easier. And I did do a lot of hostels. So the easy answer usually when you travel is to stay in a hostel, because then you can stay for as long as you want because it's so cheap. The reality is the hostels get tougher as you get older. You know. Yeah. once I hit my 30s, it got a bit awkward, and there's like 8 people in the room, and they want to like party till 5, and you're like, I got to write an article about how to, I got to write some insurance articles. I got to finish some work, and these kids are partying all day.
So what kind of work do you do?
Oh, so it's the beauty of this space is I'm a freelance writer, so I do like freelance writing, and I run a website, and I just built up multiple income streams. And like I know like a lot of people that just focus on one career, which is probably the smarter way. I've always just focused on different income streams. So I bought like rental properties. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And Miranda, you're just like this. Also a freelance writer, also a huge traveler, as we can tell because you're stuck in the Dallas airport as we speak. So,
Right.
what are your experiences like that, Miranda?
Yeah, so similarly, I travel. I haven't been on. Well, actually, that's not true. In the summer of 2016, I was on the road for 2 months with my son. We went across Canada. We actually met up with Martin.
Yeah, in
And
Toronto.
yes, in Toronto, and went across Canada, and then did some stuff in the U.S. So have done things like that. Have gone on Viking River cruises to Europe with my son, and then right now, this trip I'm on right now, I'm only gone for 2 weeks, but part of it will be spent. It's not a foreign country; it's Puerto Rico, but it'll feel like a foreign country because there'll be a nice warm beach, and so. But yeah, so similarly, I do, like Martin, I do have to do work while I travel, but because it's location independent, I can kind of work it around my schedule, write some articles, hop on a podcast, all of those things. And then I think too, I've talked to people who since COVID-19, they've been able to kind of leverage the Great Resignation into an ability to work remotely if their job allows it. And so more people are able to travel that way as well. So that's a big part of it, is having location independent work for us.
I like
it's
that,
actually
location independent. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, sorry, that actually happened to one of my friends. He never really traveled, and he was kind of nervous. He wasn't sure. Then his job went remote, and then he was like always at home. He's just sitting in his basement, and he goes, "Why am I doing this? Like, this is so boring. It's so cold." So he came to Mexico. He met me there, and the beauty about now is like you don't even have to be an entrepreneur or some like digital nomad to be online. You could just have a regular job, and if it's online, Mexico's on the Eastern time zone, which is if you're on that time zone, it's not even a time change, right? So anybody can live abroad. It's become so much easier. It's like ridiculously easy now. I'm honestly surprised more people don't do it.
And actually, just to be clear too, Martin, what you just said, I've been working home for 30 years, 20 of them sitting right here where I am right now. My kitchen's right there. I'm sitting at my desk.
That's awesome.
So now you made me feel bad. I'm just letting you know.
Oh, sorry. I'm sure you have a nice
I haven't
home.
gone to Mexico. It's at right here. My wife is a nurse practitioner, so she has to go to work every day.
Yeah.
I could live in Tokyo or anywhere else. It doesn't matter where I live because I'm doing what you guys do. Actually, all 4 of us don't have an office. So, and Aaron, that reminds me, you also travel internationally, right? Frequently.
We've traveled quite a bit. My wife actually should be on this show because she's the travel agent of the family. Yeah, she's dug through the piles and done the Airbnb, and she digs for all the deals, and we've been able to travel to quite a few places on the cheap, just digging, like Martin's doing. We talked about doing that thing, just not having a house, get in an RV, and do all the stuff that we're doing right now remotely, but I'm uploading and download gigabytes of video. Even right now, we're recording this in video, and I'm like, I looked into cellular networks and all kinds of things. And I'm like, this is impossible for me to like work remotely with this. I mean, you guys are like, it sounds like you're just writing text and doing things like that. But for me, it's a little bit harder.
No, I agree. But on the cheap side, though, if you're like I was mentioning earlier, if you're a little bit resourceful, there's so many ways to find deals. And like the one thing that I did, a little trick, was like I would stay a bit further away from the main strip, which would be like a fraction of the price. It would go from like $100 to like $20 a night, and then there's like a bus. So I was just taking with the bus with the locals, and it was 10 pesos. That's like less than $1 American dollar. So within 10 minutes,
let me ask you, how much were you paying? You were just in Mexico.
Yeah.
How much were you paying for the Air? You're staying at somebody else's house, and they're there too. It's not you renting the whole house, right?
No, Airbnb is different. So it's a tough for me to answer because I'm always on the go. I don't mind being a little creative, so I would just try to find deals on Airbnb, and like It's
But
very
how much were
seasonal
you
too.
just paying though when you were in Mexico? How much were you just paying?
It could be anywhere from $20 to $100 a night. It all fluctuates.
Okay, so it's not free. I mean, it's still. I mean, it's not
Of
a
course.
hostel. Hostels are cheaper than that, right?
Yeah,
I did a lot of traveling when I was your age. Actually, probably even younger. I hitchhiked across the United States and I hitchhiked in
amazing.
Europe, hitchhiked in Australia, stayed in hostels. And let me tell you something. I'm 66 now. Ain't no way I'm doing that now.
Of course,
So
yes,
do that.
yes.
Do that when you're young, because when you're my age, you start going like, "Wait, there's not a separate bedroom in the suite." I mean, it's like you
Oh,
can't.
of
You just
course.
don't do it. So enjoy it while you're young.
But speaking of
So
Airbnb, so the one thing I tell people is like that they say, "How do you afford it?" So last year, what I did was you just rent your own place out. So let's say you want to travel for a long time, and
Yeah.
you just put your own place in Airbnb, and then you make the money. Well, luckily, I had a good tenant last year, so you rent your place, you get the money coming in, use that money to fund your travel, and it's like I feel guilty saying it. It's like it doesn't even cost you anything. It would cost you more to stay at home sometimes.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, they used to have house swapping. You guys are writers, financial writers. Are they still have the house swapping websites?
Yeah. You can still do house swapping. You can do house sitting. They have a lot of those kinds of things where you can still do that. But a lot of it has really moved into the straight Airbnb, Vrbo kind of thing where you just straight up pay for a night.
So that's not as popular now, this house swapping.
Well,
Now,
there's couch
sticking with the
surfing, but-
Airbnb and Vrbo thing, obviously in the news, there's been a lot of articles about the safety issues where there's been people already in these rooms. How are you traveling safely, and how do you suggest people do it?
Airbnb safety. Oh yeah, so
Yeah.
it is big. I did get screwed over one night. Full disclosure, we landed in we were in Tulum. We came back to Playa del Carmen, and they just gave our place up. This time we had a hotel. So it's the one thing you have to remember that laws are different in different countries, and like they're not as strict in some places, or some places it's a bit tougher. So you have to do some due diligence. And the one thing you always look out for is reviews. Never trust like a Airbnb host that has no reviews. Make sure they have at least 5 reviews and they look like real reviews. Yeah, because if you see like a good deal, it's like, oh, you could stay in this mansion for $100. Like this person's got no reviews. It's a scam. And I know it's annoying to hear this, but there are a lot of scams. And there's also I don't know if you guys are familiar with the concept of catfishing.
Sure.
Like in the dating world, someone uses like a different picture of themselves. Well, Airbnb catfishing is the worst because there's also a thing like people use these ridiculous photos. It looks like you're staying in this like luxurious place, and you get there and it's a dump. Like this has happened to me, and the catfishing is ridiculous. I'm like these photos are not even remotely close. So I guess that's kind of part of the adventure of traveling. You eventually learn like if you're gonna see like you're staying in LA, you see a mansion for like dirt cheap. It's either a scam or you're being catfished or something's up.
That's why we made this podcast video, so we'd make sure it was actually you, Martin. Not just
good.
somebody standing in for you.
I'm glad.
So, let's, is it time? Yeah, we'll take a really quick break here. And when we come back, I want to talk about, because there's a lot of people out there listening to this or watching this that don't have a job that allows them to go all over the world and work wherever they want. So let's address that, and also maybe some tips, some specific tips on whoever it is that's traveling, wherever they're traveling, to make that traveling cheaper. Okay, so we'll be right back after this, guys. Hold on right there. Okay, we are back. So let's address the people who aren't as fortunate as you guys, who have to actually go to work every day and can't go away for weeks at a time. International travel is still something that people can afford if they know what to do, right? I mean, if they do it right. True?
True, very true. Go ahead, Miranda.
Oh, I was going to say, so you may not be able to go for like 2 months, but you could still go on a decent trip. One of the things that one of my friends and travel companions did when we wanted to go to Mexico is we went ahead and planned it around Christmas time when she was going to when she had days off anyway from work. And we were lucky because Christmas was like right at the weekend. And so we were able to extend the trip out, because if you like look at that and you look at your like holidays from work and see where they line up with weekends and then where you get regular, like your regular days off, then you can take less paid time off, less PTO, and use less of that for your travel. So that's nice. That's just something that she did to make it so that we could travel and stay longer, stay for 2 weeks, and she didn't have to use 2 whole weeks of PTO. She was able to actually, I think we ended up, making it so that out of those 2 weeks, she only ended up having to use 5 days of actual PTO because of the way things worked out with her job.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, I meant to ask you guys this in the first section, but let me ask you this real quick. I'm going to put you on the spot. We didn't rehearse this beforehand. Favorite spot in the world, Martin?
For what? For just to be?
Yeah. If I said to you, what's the best place you've ever been? What would you say?
Somewhere like maybe like Thailand, PP Islands, Thailand, because it's like a perfect
really
mix
like
of
to go there. I haven't been to
weather. It's hot, cheap food. Like I train like MMA and stuff. So a lot of training there, and it's just a good life.
Cool. Miranda?
Yeah, I'm kind of a bougie bitch, and so like I still really enjoy going to Austria. Like Vienna is my favorite city.
Vienna's beautiful.
I love Vienna, and but I do have a goal. I do want to go up the Dalmatian coast in Croatia. Like that's one of my bucket list items.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
I've never been to Croatia.
Yeah, it's on the Adriatic Sea. It's supposed to be wonderful and cheap. It's supposed to be wonderful and cheap.
How about you, Aaron?
We have yet to hit Australia and Asia, but so far I think Italy. We took a car trip and drove all the way around Italy, and that was
you're
that was
bougie
awesome.
like me.
Yeah, wherever we go, we like to rent a car and just drive.
I love Amsterdam. Was my favorite city.
Nice.
Really, I've never been there.
No, you haven't. It's really cool. It's great if you like smoking pot. I'm not a huge pot smoker, but it's just really beautiful there. But anyway, and the truth is, I thought all three of you would say like, well, it depends. There's a lot of beautiful places in the world, and there are. There's no place really that sticks out above anything else to me. But
I hate that answer.
Cities.
You got to answer.
Yeah. So now let's talk about some specific stuff. For those, whether you can travel for weeks or just days. Let's talk about some specific things that are going to help people save money when they travel. I'll start. I know that one of the things I try to do when I travel is I try to hit up the locals, and I advise people to do that in the United States, anywhere you go, because don't pick up some newspaper and see what the most expensive thing to do in town is. Ask somebody who lives there and say, where do you take your family? Where would you like to go? Because every town has something free to do. And the added benefit is you might get somebody. I've had so many good experiences talking to locals. I've had people getting drunk in a bar, and then having them take me to their house and drive around the city. I mean, you can really have a good time meeting people, talk about politics, whatever it is.
Best.
And you get a real feel for the culture, way better than what you'd get for some tour from a hotel, or something.
And it's fun.
That.
You can learn the language too, right? So that's why I love staying with locals. I love practicing languages, and like it's a respect thing too. You're showing them that you're trying to learn their culture, and you're not just there to party and mess the place up.
Yeah. So, how many languages do you speak? I struggle with English.
I speak Polish.
What speak?
I speak English, Polish, and I'm learning Spanish, but it's so tough. It's so humbling learning a language.
Well, I was thinking if you're going to live in Mexico for months, you must be learning to speak Spanish.
I am. Right? I want to say I understand what's going on, but it's so humbling. It's like, like my parents came to Canada from Poland. They had to learn English. It's such a humbling feeling when you're trying to learn a language. You don't know what's going on. So I study every day. I feel confident, but then once you get into like a debate, you're like, oh, this is embarrassing. I don't know what the next word is.
Yeah, I find it difficult. Okay, Miranda, tip, or anybody has. What do you think would save you the most money if you're traveling internationally?
So what I've found is traveling off season.
Yes.
So traveling off season is one of the best ways to save some money. Like when you think about it, like nobody ever goes to Paris in February or early March, but the weather's still okay. Like it's still warm enough. You're still very pretty, but there just aren't as many tourists. So that's and then it's also cheaper. You can get much cheaper flights. And so I really like traveling off season when I can, because you're going to get a cheaper flight and you have the added bonus of not having as many tourists running around.
But you could miss events too, certain events that are going on in the city you could miss. But yes, I agree. There's less tourists during off season. Yeah.
Actually, I was about to make that offer to Martin. Martin, I live in Fort Lauderdale. Come down here and stay here in July while I stay at your place in Toronto. You'll love it.
Well, because Canada only has two good months. You got to take advantage of those good 2 months.
And the one thing it's brutal here in July. I'll tell you that. Yeah, I said it's brutal here in July. And you and Miranda are both like, God, it's so freezing. I'm like, it's never freezing here. It's really hot here sometimes, though, in Florida.
And the one thing I was going to say.
What else, Martin? Give me another tip.
The one thing travel is one of those things we have to make it a priority. So a lot of people, they like travel is like a fantasy to them. They talk about how they want to travel, but they don't actually do anything about it. Like they'll see you post a photo and they'll be like, "Oh, it must be nice." I'm like, "Well, I saved up for this," right? So you have to make it a priority. So I would create a travel fund, like put aside 20, $50 every week, $100, whatever you can every week. Set some money aside.
Yeah, that's a great
just
idea.
So you're saving up for this. So it's not something you put on your credit card. And then I would use Google Flights to track flights. So like I look for the cheapest day to go and I'd make a list of places I want to visit and then use Google Flights and just track random days. And like what I do is I track in a month that I want to go or around the time period that I want to go in. And then when a day gets closer, I find the cheapest date and I use my travel fund and then I book my flight.
Setting aside money for travel. That sounds familiar, doesn't it, Miranda? I believe I've heard you say that before.
I have. Yeah, no, I actually have a travel fund. I set it aside. And so this is where you have to really think about where your risk tolerance is and what you want to do with this. But I actually keep my travel fund in a taxable investment account. And so I have a whole process. Yeah, I have a whole process. And this whole process is, yeah, right. The whole process is
Makes the trip more exciting.
Right. And if I have to sell at a loss, now my trip is tax deductible because I can tax loss harvest. No,
but that's right. If you're investing,
So no, but I do have a process.
Win lose, actually.
Whatever. Anyway, all of my investment accounts have a purpose, and the travel fund's purpose is to maximize the money I put into it so that I can travel more. And so I do have a system where what I do is I use my rewards credit cards. And so I book my travel with the rewards credit cards, and I try and find the one that is paying, like some of your credit cards are going to pay 2 times or 3 times points when you book travel with them. So I book my travel with the rewards credit card, and then I go ahead and just liquidate whatever, if I spend $3,000, then I sell $3,000 worth of stocks, and they've got to be long-term, right? More than a year old.
Right.
So I go ahead and I sell, that amount and then pay off the credit card. And usually the amount is small enough that the capital gains aren't that big. And so that's nice. And like I said, if I do go in and I find something that's kind of losing and that I'm not interested in having anymore, I'll go ahead and sell that at a loss. And now I can deduct it from my taxes. And now all of a sudden my trip has earned me 3 times the points on my credit card and it's tax deductible. So
that's awesome.
It does the job.
Yeah, that's actually a great tip too, though, because I just booked 2 first-class tickets to Hawaii, all with points.
I like the humble brag, the first-class tickets.
Yeah, well, I mean, I get it. We've talked about this before, Martin, on this podcast, because I get a lot of points because I run a lot of stuff through this business.
Of course.
So, I mean, I took 650,000 points to get 2 first-class tickets to Hawaii, but I have another card with 1 million points on it. So but using points is a good idea for travel. That's a great tip. How about you, Aaron? You got anything you can throw in here?
Yeah, a few tips. So going back to the Airbnb thing, those are great. It's super important because of language barriers and stuff like that to email these people constantly because you got to make sure you get the keys to those rooms. Sometimes your flights are delayed. You're coming in at 1 o'clock in the morning, and these places are way different, than America. So you got to make sure there's somebody there to open the door, or somehow they can leave the key there for you. The other thing is cool is I love Google Maps. So before you go into a foreign country, usually they have way better public transportation than we do here in the States.
Always.
So there's always going to be a subway. There's always going to be a rail line. So you can save money on rental cars that way. But it's really fun to go on Google Streets and kind of drive around through the streets to kind of get a gist of the area and see, well, how far away is this place I'm wanting to rent, from the subway or things like that. And it helps you get around a little bit faster when you're in there.
One thing that helps too is taking public transit around. Like when I landed in Cancun, I remember the first time you always do something, you always get ripped off, right? So I remember I took a cab, it was like 100 American. It was ridiculous. The bus is like $10. So if you take a public transit around, you can get around for dirt cheap. And it's
you can.
I was moving around between cities in Mexico. I found like this colectivo. It's just a random bus. I don't even know if it's legal or not, but some guy like a bus like this almost, I'll come and pick you up. And once again, it's like 20 pesos and I'm getting around what would have been $100. I'm like, wow. And then like small little tips too, I forgot to mention, like you can, like if you eat on the main strip and do everything in the main tourist area, you will always get ripped off in life, right? Like it's just So like in Tulum, like I didn't eat by the beach. First of all, I want good food. I don't want like tourist crappy food, right?
Right.
So I want the real food. So just by eating like street tacos, I was saving like it's ridiculous how much you save. It's at least $50 a meal. Like they rip you off so much in tourist places. So like avoid tourist shops because if you go to a touristy place for 1 week, you'll blow your entire budget. I can survive for a month just by eating street food or making your own food in an Airbnb, taking the bus, riding a bike, and you can stay out there for as long as you want. Really.
So, before we wrap up, though, I do want to kind of touch on something important that Martin ran into when he went to Mexico this time around. Let's talk about that whole visa situation and what you need to know about visa. Because part of the thing, too, one of the problems with this isn't necessarily specifically Martin's issue, but one thing to be aware of, if you are somebody who does work remotely, you need to make sure that you know what kind of visa you're on, because sometimes if they find out you're working remotely while you're in the country, they will kick you out.
Oh,
you got to watch out for that work visa.
How do they know? How would they know?
But Martin ran into another problem. Martin, tell us about how you ended up in Colombia.
Yeah. What happened?
Yes, I ended up in Colombia somehow, in Medellin. So what happens is when you travel, you have to remember you're going to somebody else's country. You can complain all you want. You can be as mad as you want. You can talk about your country. They don't care. You're in their home, right? So like I've traveled to places where like they have their own rules. So Mexico, you're supposed to get 6 months as a Canadian. Long story short, you're supposed to get a 6-month visa, no questions asked, right? But what happened? People just stopped leaving Mexico in the last couple of years. Like people just go there and stay. It's so beautiful. So I assumed I had 6 months. I got there and they stamped my visa. I didn't even check, right? I'm like you get 6 months. So I thought I was good. And then I met a guy at a crypto meetup. Like, it was just like a meetup. It's like, and then he's telling me how he just got out of jail. I'm like, what did you do? Like, how did you end up in jail? Then he told me he got arrested because now they started giving people like a shorter visa. So he got 30 days and he didn't know. The cops pulled him over because I guess they're sick of all these people not leaving, whatever the reason is. And they put him in jail for overstaying his visa.
How long was he in jail?
6 weeks.
What? Then he overstayed his visa there.
Yeah. So look this up.
No, that's terrible, though.
If you want a good laugh, not a good laugh. They look up visa issues. It became really serious. So then I checked my visa and I realized it was expiring on the Sunday. I'm like, man, like I don't want to go to jail, right? It's like, because I thought I had 6 months, but they put just a random number. I don't know why. I don't know what the reason is, but maybe they just, whatever. They give me this random number. So luckily I found a flight out of there and I went to Colombia just to avoid ending up in jail. Because then they went through a phase of putting people in jail for overstaying visas. It became like a real international issue with a bunch, like the German embassy had to get involved and other embassies had to get involved.
Wow. So
know the local rules always and like the legal rules.
So now all this advice we've been giving people is wasted because now they're going to be afraid to go anywhere.
No, I mean,
check your visa. That's like your number one rule when you're traveling abroad. Is the number one rule is check your visa.
I know, Miranda, you've got to check out here in just a second, right? So you got anything else you want to add before you have to go?
I think it's really important. We talk about values a lot and our financial values and what matters to us. And if value, and one of the reasons why I started traveling was because I did look around and say, wait a second, how come I never get to travel? And then I realized it was because I said I wanted to travel, but I didn't align my spending and I didn't align my saving and I didn't align my finances in a way that allowed me to. So once I started saying, okay, travel is the priority, I'm going to set aside X amount of dollars each month in a travel fund, and that is how I'm going to start traveling. And I made it a priority. I stopped spending on things that didn't matter and really focused on that travel. So I think one of the big things about deciding to travel and saving up money for it, whether you stay domestic or whether you go international, is really making it that priority and figuring out, okay, if that's my value, I need to prioritize that.
Cool.
And the flip side of that is I'm willing to give up like weekends at home, or like I'm willing to work longer hours, because once you realize what you want, it's on you to make it a priority. So if you make travel a priority, you have to actually match, like you said, match your actions to what you're what you want to do.
Now I'm re-inspired.
Now you're good. Just get the right visa.
You got anything else, Aaron? Any other tips from you, Aaron?
No, yeah, but definitely look into those visa things, because sometimes you have to prepay before you go. So yeah, you have to look into that, because sometimes when you get there to the country, it's not that easy to pay the travel tax or whatever it is, you know. prepare like months in advance. If you want to use their denomination, their cash, hit your bank up and find a way, because usually banks will offer like the cheapest, what do you call it?
Exchange rate.
Exchange rate.
So, because you don't want to do it while you're there, because it can get really expensive.
Yeah, and now, you guys don't remember this probably, but back in the day when I first started traveling, you'd carry
first time I went abroad, traveler's checks.
What's that?
And now that stuff doesn't exist, and it's easier now just to use a credit card. The exchange rate on the credit card is typically less, and make sure you have a credit card that doesn't have a fee for doing that, which is more rare now. It used to be super common for those cards to have fees. I was also going to say, when you said dirt cheap, it reminded me also of doing your own laundry. And my wife and I have been to Europe for 10 days with carry-ons. So we never check. The only time I've ever checked luggage is when I'm going skiing, because the stuff's so bulky, you have to. But you can, you do the laundry, do the laundromat. You will find that getting to a laundromat is going to be way more challenging than it is here, especially if you don't speak the language. But, again, you're mixing with the locals, and also you're not lugging around a whole bunch of crap that could get lost, stolen, or charged for, travel light. The lighter you travel, the better.
And it's also a life philosophy. Buy less stuff, experience more. And I travel with one bag. I don't need, you're on the beach. How many shirts do you need, right? One is probably too many.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And another mistake I've made too, I just thought of this. I've tried to hit too many places at once. Going to Europe for a week and tried to go to Paris, London, and what happens is you're hurrying all the time. You're seeing nothing. The first time I went to Paris with my wife, we went to Versailles. Versailles was closed. So we didn't know because we didn't pay attention. So we went out. You have to take this train. We're all the way out there to Versailles. Versailles is closed.
Far.
So we walk around the gardens. So the next day we decided we're going to go to the Louvre. Well, the Louvre was closed on that day. So we did this exactly backwards. And then we had to leave because we were going to Spain. So
really, that's a far trip.
Planning ahead. I don't plan much. My wife does, but make sure somebody in your family or somebody who's traveling with you cares enough to read this stuff and figure out what's going on. Don't try to do too much. Better to stay in one place 5 days than to try to hit 5 different places in 5 days. You won't have as much fun. You'll be stressed.
I agree. It becomes a job at that point when you're just trying to cross off things for the sake of crossing off things.
Yeah. Because, you can say you've been to all these places without actually going there. You're not going to see them anyway. You can just do that. So, guys, we are out of time, but we are never out of this topic. Dig deeper. You're going to find links to lots more info in our show notes, and we have lots of articles with tips on how to travel overseas, so be sure and check those out. And remember, if your goal is to make more, to spend less, to retire rich, your online home is moneytalksnews.com. And don't forget to check out Miranda's online home as well. That is mirandamarquit.com. And, of course, you want to visit Martin Dasko at his website. That, again, was studenomics.com or studenomics.com, whichever you'd prefer. If you got a question, comment, or topic you'd like to suggest, please tell us about it. Email us at hello@moneytalksnews.com. And one last thing, if you appreciate what we do, do something for us. Subscribe to our podcast. Takes you 2 seconds. Really helps us, though. So if you like us, show us and subscribe. I'm Stacey Johnson.
I've got to go catch a flight.
Miranda.
I'm Aaron Freeman.
Martin Dasko.
All right. Thanks again for hanging out with us, Martin, and all you folks, too. We'll see you right here next time. Get your plane, Miranda. Bye.